the major issue for us was trying to find an open platform end-to-end solution for digital asset management, and the market is filled with people who claim to have end-to-end solutions, but few do. We are in the early stages of implementing the digital asset management system using the Artesia Teams software, Artesia of OpenText. We have been working with them in developing that software, as well as with Sun, for a number of years on the reference architecture for digital asset management.
We want you on our side.
The issue for us was driven in part by the increase in the number of programming output that we are now engaged in. Behind me here in Master Control, we are outputting 8 separate channels of video programming, up from 2 just a few years ago. And the increase in the number of channels has to do with our putting digital television transmitters on the air, which are capable of multicasting. Plus an online stream that we provide to apple.com/QuickTime for web streaming as well. We also provide a family and children's program service for the city of Boston on the city's public access channel. So it's a lot of content to keep track of. And while we could do it in the 2-channel age, in the 8-channel age it becomes more and more difficult to do this manually. On the production side, as you can well imagine, producing as much programming as we do and needing to version it across many different versions, many different platforms, the ability to track that becomes critical to the survival of the organization. No exaggeration. It is literally impossible to keep track of all of this content, particularly in the context of the changes in the consumer marketplace. Because what's happening with remarkable rapidity is consumers are now in a position to determine what they're going to watch and when they're going to watch it, at what level of resolution, on what kind of receive device. And unless we as a content producer are prepared to meet their needs in those various platforms, we're going to fall pretty far behind in terms of the rate at which people access the content that we have available. One of the consequences of implementing a digital asset management system is that it requires that you scrub down the workflow, every single detail, how content is acquired, how it's captured, whether it's original footage or whether it's stock footage that we integrate into programs, the digitization of the content, it's brought into post. Increasingly, every one of these stages is a digital file as opposed to working with tape-based media as we used to. What we also found, no surprise, is that there were many different departments within the organization that needed access to the same content. So the people who do the on-air promotional announcements needed access to the same content that the producer was working with, needed access to the same content that the people who do the website work also needed. And every one of them, we were chagrined to discover, was redigitizing the same content over and over again. And once you look at the diagram, it becomes embarrassingly obvious where the enormous inefficiencies are in the workflow process. How do you wring out the inefficiencies, the redundancies, the unnecessary steps in between the point at which content is acquired and the point at which it's distributed? And certainly a digital asset management system and the required workflow analysis and, if you will, re-engineering that prompts are part of moving toward a far more efficient way of creating the content and being able to version it in the various forms that consumers are looking for. We did a series of programs about Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden before, regrettably, anybody knew who that was and what that was all about. And so after 9/11 and in subsequent events, we had an enormous library of material and literally had to pull 1,500 tapes from the archives from work that Frontline had done in order to create the new program. We're still early on in our full-blown implementation of the digital asset management system and the related systems that go with it. One of the opportunities is that we're moving to a brand new facility. We now have an archives vault, 5,000 square feet. We've got about 300,000 hours of video programming. As we move toward digital files for storage, it clearly will require far less physical space than we now have. And as we begin to digitize the content in the archives, that also will reduce our physical space needs.